Symptom 1. Car won't start. When a car refuses to start, the engine doesn't crank when you turn the key or press the button. The ignition switch's job is to send battery power to the starter motor and ignition system so the engine can fire. If the switch fails, that current never reaches them, and you get complete silence. You may see dash lights, hear the radio, or use headlights, which can mislead you into thinking the battery is fine, but the engine won't respond. Before blaming the switch, confirm the battery is charged and the transmission is in park or neutral, since those issues can mimic the same symptom. If both check out, gently jiggle the key or turn the steering wheel while trying to start. Worn contacts sometimes reconnect briefly. When there's still no cranking after these steps, the ignition switch is likely faulty and should be replaced by a professional as soon. Symptom 2. Engine stalls suddenly. A sudden stall occurs when the engine shuts off unexpectedly, either right after starting or while driving. In the on position, the ignition switch must constantly deliver power to critical systems like the fuel pump, ignition coils, and engine control unit. When the switch fails, it can lose contact for a split second, cutting power and killing the engine. The car might start normally, then suddenly lose power and stall because the switch only made a brief connection. Even a small bump can break that contact, making it feel as though someone turned off the key mid-drive. From the driver's seat, the engine dies. Power steering and brakes fade, and control becomes difficult, a serious hazard in traffic. There's no quick roadside fix. If it happens, shift to neutral and try restarting. Avoid heavy keychains that stress the switch. Ultimately, replacing the ignition switch is the only reliable cure. Symptom 3. Loss of electrical accessories. When the ignition switch begins to fail, you might notice electrical accessories such as the radio, interior lights, or windshield wipers turning off and on at random while driving. In a properly working system, the ignition switch provides steady power to these components in both the ACC and ON positions. But as the switch wears out, loose internal contacts can momentarily cut power to the accessory circuits, causing your dashboard lights or infotainment screen to shut off and flicker back on a few seconds later. These brief power interruptions often occur when vibrations or road bumps shake the weakened switch. Drivers typically experience unpredictable behavior. The radio might cut out, or the instrument panel may suddenly go dark before recovering. If wiggling the key restores power temporarily, it confirms the problem. However, that's only a short-term workaround. Replacing the ignition switch is the only lasting solution for reliable accessory power. Symptom 4. No noise from the starter. A silent start happens when you turn the key to the start position and hear nothing. No clicks, no cranking, just silence. Normally, the ignition switch sends power from the battery to the starter relay, which then activates the starter motor to turn the engine. When the switch fails, it blocks that current entirely, leaving the starting circuit inactive. The result is total silence because the starter never receives a signal to engage. As a driver, you may see the dashboard lights turn on, but the engine won't respond, feeling as if it's disconnected from the ignition system. Before assuming the switch is bad, confirm the battery is fully charged and the gear selector is in park or neutral. If both check out and the engine still doesn't react, the ignition switch is likely the issue. Bypassing the starter temporarily may work, but replacement is the only proper fix. Symptom 5. Key won't turn in the ignition. Sometimes the ignition key won't turn at all, or it's very stiff and hard to move out of the lock position. Normally, the key and ignition switch rotate smoothly together, unlocking the steering wheel and powering the vehicle's systems as you move through the ACC, ON, and start positions. When the mechanism wears out or suffers internal damage, it can jam, preventing the key from turning. In some cases, the issue lies in the ignition lock cylinder rather than the switch, but the result is the same. The key becomes stuck, and the ignition won't rotate. From the driver's view, the key slides in but nothing powers on, and the steering wheel stays locked. To free it, gently move the steering wheel side to side while turning the key, which can release tension. Avoid forcing it, as that can worsen damage. If it still won't turn, professional replacement is required. Symptom 6. Steering wheel is locked. Another frustrating problem tied to a bad ignition switch is a locked steering wheel that won't turn even when you insert the key. Normally, when you turn the key to the on position, The ignition switch disengages the lock pin inside the steering column, allowing the wheel to move freely. If the switch is damaged or fails to rotate fully, it may not release the pin, leaving the wheel frozen in place. For the driver, this feels as if the steering is jammed solid. You can insert the key, but turning it doesn't unlock the wheel or activate the ignition. Often, this happens together with the key won't turn issue, since both involve the same locking mechanism. The best immediate approach is to wiggle the steering wheel gently back and forth while simultaneously turning the key to the on position. This motion often releases the pressure on the lock and allows it to free up. Also, make sure your front wheels aren't pressed hard against a curb, as that can create tension in the steering lock. If these techniques fail, the ignition switch or lock mechanism itself likely needs servicing or replacement to restore normal steering function. Symptom 7. Dashboard lights. Flicker. Flickering dashboard lights are a common warning sign of a failing ignition switch. When the ignition is in the on position, the dash illumination and warning lights should receive a steady stream of power. If the switch's internal contacts are worn, corroded, or loose, that power can briefly cut out and reconnect, causing the lights to blink or dim unexpectedly. Drivers often notice the instrument cluster behaving oddly. The backlighting flickers, or warning lights blink momentarily, especially when driving over bumps or uneven roads. At night, the problem becomes even more noticeable as the dash lights flash in the dark while the engine keeps running smoothly. These quick power losses usually indicate the ignition switch can't maintain consistent voltage. Before replacing it, check for other possible causes like a weak battery or bad alternator. If those check out, the only lasting solution is replacing the ignition switch to restore steady lighting.